NBA fans, welcome back to my channel. Jordan versus LeBron. Now, we're going to get into this one real quick. Did Wilt Chamberlain say this about Michael Jordan? And before we get into this, I want to say thank you to my subscribers. If you haven't subscribe, hit the bell so you get your notifications. I want you to like, comment, even if you don't like it. This is NBA history, and this is what we do. Sometimes we talk about other sports, but we're going to go ahead and get into this one. Whew, man, I hate to talk about this because I really like Wilt Chamberlain, and I like Michael Jordan a lot. We're going to get into, did Wilt say this about Michael Jordan? I don't think he did, and we'll explain why soon. But if you saw my prior videos, I think Wilt Chamberlain is the greatest basketball player of all time. Even though this channel, you done heard me say Jordan. And if you go back and watch some of my other videos, like I said, I explained why Wilt is the greatest basketball player of all time. I think Jordan, overall, when we talk about career, like playoffs, finals, regular season, I think Jordan is the best. But I'm talking about pure basketball player. No doubt it's Wilt Chamberlain. Unofficial 8.8 blocks a game. Some seasons it went up to 10 a game. Unofficially, we know about the rebounds, the greatest rebounder of all time. Russell is second. Neck to neck with Jordan, the greatest scorer of all time, at least in the regular season. Wilt won an assist title, right? So Wilt could do it all. Wilt could do it all. He did it all. He was just a monster. If it was so easy, how come all the centers at the time wasn't doing it? And we're going to talk about this later. I think he was better than everybody else. I don't think the competition was weak. I think he was just better than everybody else because there were plenty of black players back then, especially going into the 60s. There was a lot of black players. And so we'll talk about that later on. So, again, I got Wilt Chamberlain as the greatest pure basketball player of all time. I got Jordan, the greatest, let me see, I would say NBA player of all time, if that makes sense. Had a better career, had the greatest career of all time, and Jordan just can't be matched in that. So let's talk about this. I'm not sure Wilt really said this. It really doesn't make sense. I think he said half of it, but I don't think he said all of this. This is coming from Isaiah Thomas, who is a snake. We all know about him. He said this in 97. These are his words. And he said that Wilt Chamberlain told Jordan this at the 50 greatest players of all time back in, when was that, 92 or something, 93? It was in the mid-90s or the early 90s. The 50 greatest players of all time. So that was the second anniversary. So this picture is real. And Wilt said something to Jordan. Nobody knows what was said. I don't recall Jordan ever saying that Wilt said this. And I don't remember Wilt ever saying that he said this to Jordan. But some of it I do remember Wilt saying, the first half of it, and we've always heard this. So let's read it. It says, they had to change the rules for me so I couldn't dominate. Okay? They had to change the rules for me so I couldn't dominate. Okay, I think we've heard that part before. Wilt said that plenty of times. Okay, so they had to stop a lot of stuff that Wilt was doing, especially stuff like dunking from the free throw line, which, I mean, that's incredible for a 7-footer. And people might be like, well, he's 7 foot. Okay, have you ever seen any other 7-footer dunk from the free throw line before Wilt or after Wilt? I don't think so. I don't think so. So this is what I'm talking about. This guy was crazy athletic. Um, he didn't even seem real, and they had to stop a lot of stuff from him doing because he was that great. But what I'm gonna say about that is, I think the competition wasn't as good as Wilt. He was that much better, and that's why they had to change some rules for Wilt. Okay, because it was too easy. Now he was taller than a lot of guys, but height doesn't mean nothing. A lot of dudes will just be great back in the day because of their height. You still got to have accuracy. That's the biggest part is you got to have accuracy when you're shooting the ball. And the bigger your hands are, the harder it is to shoot the ball. That's what was so incredible about Jordan. He had these big hands of a center, and he could still shoot the ball all over the court. It was nuts. But so they changed rules for Wilt. Okay, did it? I don't know if it was good or bad. Because he wasn't really winning any championships before they changed the rules. I think they were just getting him to, he could score less. I don't know how much less he really scored, though. That's what's so crazy about it. The guy would score 50 a season, 40 a season, 30 a season for a long time. So, yeah, they changed the rules on this guy. But I think because the competition wasn't that, I'm not going to say wasn't good, but wasn't as good as he was. Okay, so if you put him in the 80s, if you put Wilt in the 90s, he's not going to be dunking from free throw lines like he was in the 60s. He's not going to do a lot of stuff that he was doing in the 60s that he would do in the 80s and 90s because you got players like Kareem, Hakeem, David Robinson, Mutombo. You got all these Ewing. You got all these great Robinson. Even Duncan played in the 90s. You got some great centers, and I think that was more of his competition. I said Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. These guys were more of his competition, not the guys in the 60s or maybe not even the 70s. He was ahead of his time. And I think the same for Jordan. I think Jordan was ahead of his time. I don't think his competition wasn't until like the 90s. He was just so much better than everybody else. You might be able to say the same for LeBron James. LeBron was just so much better. I have talked about rule changes though when in 2005, but still everybody played under the same rules. But I think LeBron was just better than everybody else in his era. It's always going to be dudes who's better than the era. That's just how it's always been. You had Magic Johnson. He came in. He was just better than these guys in the era. Larry Bird was better than those dudes in the era. So Wilt was just the competition wasn't bad. He was just that much better than his competition. So they had to change the rules. So let's read the rest of this. It says they changed the rules for you, Jordan. So he would say that, and he's talking right to Jordan, right? So it says they changed the rules for you, Jordan, so you can dominate. Like Will is gonna say that to Michael Jordan, and he's sitting right there. He's gonna just say Jordan. So what rules did they change? So if we're hearing this from Isaiah Thomas, we're talking about they changed the rules going in 1991, right? When Jordan lost again in the Eastern Conference Finals in 1990 to the Pistons, who were kicking and punching Michael Jordan while he was going for buckets. Over and over and over, probably for the last 3 times they met in the playoffs. So apparently, they say Jordan went to the league office in the offseason of 1990 after losing that series and demanded that they change the rules. Okay, let's say if that happened. So You could no longer kick and punch somebody in the air while they're going for a bucket. And if you did, that was a flagrant foul. 2 shots and the ball out. Okay, so you're telling me that got Jordan 6 rings? Because after that, it was still hand checking, elbows in the back in the post, all that. You just couldn't punch and kick somebody while they're in the air. They wasn't doing that to Wilt Chamberlain. I don't remember that. They wasn't doing that to him. And that wasn't like what people did in the NBA anyways. Yeah, it was a couple fist fights and stuff like that and blow ups and stuff like that. But that ain't what the NBA did in the 60s, the 70s, in the 80s. That only one team did that. Why? Because they were a good skill team. Okay, but I think they had the least amount of skill when it came to the Lakers, when it came to the Celtics, and I think the Bulls, they was on a rise of skilled players by the time 89 came. So they were scared. So for Jordan not to score 40 a game, okay, because that's what he was aiming for. He didn't have, that many skilled players as the Pistons. So he was aiming to score like 40 and 45 a game to get to the championship game. So they wasn't having it. They had to kick and punch the guy while he was in the air. Okay. And people say, well, that was going on around the league. They was doing it. Isaiah say that was happening to other players. No, that wasn't happening. Maybe some dudes was pushing underneath the basket or somebody, get revenge on somebody. But nah, I don't see no highlights of Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all these players in mid-air getting taken out of the air, getting punched in the air, getting kicked in the air, this type of stuff. This is basketball. You imagine if they did that today, what would happen? You would be out of the league. So pretty much that's what stopped Jordan from winning 6 rings. Him not, them not being able to play football on him. I mean, not hand checking, not elbows in the back, punching and kicking someone while they're in midair. So I don't think Wilt said any of this, and I've heard interviews where Wilt was talking good about Jordan. He was like, if it wasn't for Jordan, these guys wouldn't be making all this money. They wouldn't be this famous. Jordan changed the league. They need to be kissing Jordan's butt and all this stuff. So, I mean, the LeBron media will say anything these days because that's what they do. They want to cause a rift between players, ex-players, coaches, ex-coaches, anybody, any little leg they can get up, get one leg up on in the GOAT debate for a guy that's been blown out in 6 NBA finals. Wow. This is what you got to do. You got to put Wilt against Jordan. And to me, it really don't work. I never heard Jordan say anything bad about Wilt, and I never heard vice versa. So, again, they're just trying to start some beef that ain't even there, especially Isaiah Thomas, who is one of the biggest losers of all time. We all know he walked off the court after Jordan swept him. And he didn't go to the Olympics because of that. So, you guys tell me what you think. I like I said, I don't think Wilt said this. If Wilt did say, Wilt done said a lot of crazy stuff, but I just can't imagine he would say all this. It really won't make no sense to be punched and kicked in the air. That would be a rule change for to help Michael Jordan out. Wow, I've never seen Michael Jordan get mad because a elbow was in his back in the post or he got hand checked. None of that. That was happening all through the 90s. And if you want to be real, you can look at the Wizard years when Jordan was playing. He was getting hand checked in. He was getting an elbow in the post in. So I really don't know what these guys are talking about. So, but tell me what you think.